So it wasn't until the church began to grow to the point where it became a burden for the Messianic element, the Messianic faith, and the Jewish part to stay together. It became very difficult for Gentiles entering into this body to identify with Judaism safely and comfortably and cohesively. And Jewish authorities who didn't embrace the Messianic part of the faith, right? Those Jewish leaders who didn't believe in Jesus, they actively fought to get rid of the Gentile elements. There was, a lot of sociological struggle going on, and eventually it couldn't hold together in that form. And so the Messianic faith part and the Judaism part, they ripped apart from one another. And what we ended up with was a Messianic faith that was, as David Stern calls it, devoid of its Jewish roots. And so he continues to say, these forms of Gentile Christianity, instead, they didn't retain their Messianic aspect. What it means by that is their Jewish aspect. I'm sorry, they didn't retain their Jewish element, but they instead became paganized precisely because the Tanakh, that is the Old Testament, it was forgotten or underemphasized. And we say paganized because when you have a power shift and a void is created, then something has to sweep in and fill the void. And so early Christianity began to swell in its numbers, and in the absence of the law of God dictating, the law of Moses dictating how we should live our lives, and without a proper New Testament canonized yet, in that interim period between the kind of the, hey, we're not under the law of Moses anymore, but hey, we don't have a New Testament put together just yet, then there was a lot of speculation as to, well, can we just create new traditions? Do we have the authority on earth to come up with our own kind of holy days and halakha and group policies and perspectives that meet our needs? They don't have to meet the needs of Jewish people, but they're going to meet our needs based on our allegorical and theological interpretations of the sayings of Jesus and the parts of the Bible that we did want to keep from the Jews. And how can we live our lives as people of God without resembling the synagogue? How can we keep Passover without doing it on the Nisan the 14th? Can we continue to meet as a people group of God in the synagogues, or I'm sorry, not in the synagogues, but in our church homes and things like that, without doing it on the Sabbath day? Can we switch days and still come up with reasons? Hey, so these were some of the things that happened. Eventually, full-blown paganism crept in as well. But we don't have to put everything on the blame, lay everything at the blame of paganism, because some of those things were actually, I think, paganism copied Christianity. In the past, I used to think that the church copied paganism, but now as I begin to research history just a little bit more, I think the church actually had some of the original ideas, like some of the things that have to do with Easter and such, and maybe not so much Christmas. That's really the flip-flop. But the point is, in today's modern Christianity, there are elements of paganism, and it's likely that maybe there was just some syncretization between the two. But David Stern continues. He says that Messianic Jews today are once again trying to bring New Testament faith back to its Jewish roots. So that's where we left off basically last week, right? Let's continue reading in David Stern. Let's start right there. David Stern continues, he says, whereas in verse 16, so remember there's three elements. There's the wedding feast element to Yeshua's allegory or parable. That's A. There's the wineskin element. That's the there's the cloth and the patch element. That's B. And then there's the wine and wineskin element. And so that's C. Let's deal now with the wineskin and wine and wineskin element. So in verse 16, that's what we're going to look at here. All right, David Stern says, whereas in verse 16, Messianic faith has to be adapted to Judaism, right? That's the patch and the cloth. Here it is in verse 16, speaking of the wine, it's Judaism which must be adjusted to Messianic faith. Notice it almost sounds like, wait a minute, this can't fit, right? why would Yeshua give these two allegories or parables when they're kind of flip-flopped? And if you go back and read it, let me just click on it again. In verse 16, he talks about putting a piece of unshrunk cloth onto an old garment. So the patch is the part of the story there that has to do some adjusting. The garment itself is not going to shrink anymore. It's old. But the patch has the choice. Can I shrink? Should I shrink, or should I stay the way I am unshrunk? Okay, so the adjustment has to take place at the patch. But if you look at the verse 17, which David Stern is going to talk about, when he talks about new wine and old wineskins, it's the wineskins that need to make the adjustment. The wine itself doesn't have to change. So we're still talking some challenge here. There's still some adjustment either on one element or the other. But notice that Yeshua flip-flopped the example. I don't know if you caught that there or not, right? So either way, we've got some work ahead of us, and we're talking about interpreting. So let's keep reading what David Stern says. So he says here in verse 17, Judaism is the one that has to be adjusted to Messianic faith. If one tries to put new wine, which is Messianic faith, into old wineskins, that is traditional Judaism, the faith is lost and Judaism is ruined. Notice David Stern's working from the allegorical perspective, right? Again, he's not working from this practical common sense. Hey, no one does this and that and this and that because that just doesn't make sense, right? Common sense. So David Stern's working from the idea that Yeshua has an allegory. David Stern says, but if Judaism is freshly prepared, reconditioned, that is, so that it can accommodate trust in Yeshua the Messiah, then both the faith and the renewed Judaism, known as Messianic Judaism, both of them are preserved. And indeed, I've been challenging us with the idea that if we go back over to the parable and look, if we read into verse 16, where Yeshua's talking about the patch and the piece of cloth, the idea is that you want to keep the cloth.